Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Reuven Azar, who will share his views on what it really takes. You know, when talking about Israel, what will it take to achieve lasting peace? And he will be in conversation with our senior executive editor, Input Times Now and Mirror Now, Madhav Das Gopalakrishnan.
A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much for that, Swati, as well as Hina. And even as we are discussing peace, of course, Mr. Reuven Azar, I'm going to, of course, thank you for joining us here at the Times Now Summit 2025. We have seen a ceasefire recently in the Middle East. We have seen a resumption of fighting. What is really happening over there at this point of time, Mr. Reuven Azar, is a question that many want to know, because whenever there is such fighting, such escalation that takes place, there is always the possibility of it becoming a larger conflict. What are we looking at in your estimation?
Well, Madhav, thank you for hosting me. What we are seeing now is indeed a renewal of fire between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. But this time around, the situation is completely different, because Israel actually has decimated Hezbollah in the north. The situation in Lebanon has changed. There is a new government there, and Hezbollah's force is reduced. There has been a change in Syria as a result of that, because Hezbollah wasn't capable of sustaining the Assad regime anymore. And Iran has been hardly hit by our retaliation after it directly attacked us. So the situation is such that following those developments and the decimation of the Hamas military machinery in the Gaza Strip, what we are left with, basically, is with 59 hostages we have to bring back home, and with Hamas having to renounce power in the Gaza Strip. The only reason they are still there is because they have managed to sequestrate the international assistance that is being given and actually sell it to the population. So they are losing legitimacy on the ground. There are demonstrations as we speak in the Gaza Strip against them. We could end this today. The only thing that has to happen is that they have to release the rest of the hostages. We have brought back already 195, and to transfer power to a local authority that actually will give hope to the Palestinian people. So the question is, how much more military pressure we'll have to use until this comes to an end.
You've made a number of points. I'm going to come to each of them one by one. The first is the 59 hostages that you said after over a year. How confident are you of getting them back?
Sorry, come again?
The 59 hostages.
Yes.
How confident are you of getting them back with this kind of a military strategy?
Well, we are worried, concerned, but we are optimistic, and I'll tell you why. Because at the outset of this terrible disaster that happened to us on the 7th of October, we thought that it would be very difficult to bring the hostages back, and what Hamas wanted is to extort a surrender from us in return of the hostages. But thanks to the military pressure and the international support, we've been able to bring 195, as I said. So I'm sure that the combination of military pressure and diplomacy, I think it's Kissinger said that military means or is the continuation of diplomacy in other means. You have to use military pressure, because without that, terrorist organizations won't cave in and give us back our people.
But the big question is that with the civilian casualties piling up, when you have any kind of military strategy, there is obviously going to be civilian casualties. And in a situation like that, who can guarantee the safety of even the hostages who you are trying to actually rescue by doing this operation?
Well, Hamas knows very well that there's a dear price to pay if they hit the hostages. And I'll tell you something. I don't know if you noticed, but in the last day, Hamas Ministry of Health has released the names and the ID numbers of all the casualties they claim that Israel killed during the conflict. Now, when you look at that data, we already have seen that, first of all, there is a huge difference between male and female. So in the group age between 15 and 55, which is the fighting age in Hamas, you can see a gap of 16,000. If you retract from the 50,000, 8,000 natural deaths, and you retract also the proportional number, because there were also some female fighters. So all in all, you get to the conclusion that about 20,000 Hamas and other terrorist organizations terrorists were killed, and about a similar number of civilians, which is very tragic. But if you take into account that, first of all, we are talking here about urban warfare, when you compare it to any other complicated situation like that, the ratio actually is very low. So although every single death of a person is tragic, Israel actually is having an amazing record, also according to military experts like John Spencer, in being able of reducing collateral damage and reducing the loss of civilian life. And anybody that will tell you something else is dead wrong. There are a lot of attempts to legitimize us, but the IDF is working according to very high standards of operation, and any operation is being approved, is a military target that is being approved by the lawyers that are assigned to the mission. So we have to take into account that this is a very complicated situation, that Hamas is embedding itself behind the civilian populations, inside hospitals, inside ambulances. They are, breaching any code in the book. You know it very well, because India, has a lot of experience dealing with terrorists. You know what their tactics are. So when you take that into account, you can easily get to the conclusion that actually Israel has been performing outstandingly when it comes to reducing human cost.
But, there's a problem with that because, as you say, they're so heavily embedded there. You're alleging time and again that they have used civilian cover, so on and so forth, and that has been reported as well to a large extent. But the point is this, that you are asking them to leave Gaza. I'm just quoting what you said. Hamas must go back to diplomacy, agree to surrender power in Gaza Strip. If it doesn't and continues rejecting American proposals, it will pay a price. Now, can we honestly expect an organization that has indulged in the kind of violence that Hamas has to suddenly one fine day give up the arms? Is that a practical position?
Well, I think it is practical. I think that at the end of the day, the pressure will come from the Palestinian population. We have seen that situation in the past, in '82, when we actually put less pressure on Fatah and they exited Beirut back in '82. I think that Hamas now has no choice. And at the end of the day, although they are renegading and although this is taking time and effort, they have only two options, either to be eliminated by the IDF or to leave the Gaza Strip.
Right. You also refer to certain videos that are going viral over the last 24 hours, and those are videos of people in Gaza who are coming out and chanting slogans of Hamas out. What do we make of what's happening there?
Well, you have to be very courageous to demonstrate against Hamas, because we have seen what terrible deeds Hamas have been doing in the open to people that were daring to criticize them, shooting them in the legs, killing them, torturing them, putting them in dungeons. So the fact that the frustration is mounting creates a situation that, despite the fear and the concern from Hamas operatives, people are going out in the street, and not in one place. We have seen it yesterday, maybe in 6 or 7 locations around the Gaza Strip.
Right. And also, the Gaza Health Authority, who has put out casualty figures of about 50,000. Now, you obviously do not trust what has been put out there. But the larger question is that, when you have this kind of military engagement, of course, the challenge of, them taking civilian cover, etc., is there. But it's a huge amount of civilian casualties we could be looking at. If Hamas does not surrender, we could be looking at potentially tens of thousands of lives that could further be lost if this military action continues. How do we minimize that kind of human and civilian loss of life?
Well, I think that, first of all, Israel has to defend itself, and we have to achieve our goals. The second thing, the reality is that we've been improving our tactics, and the fact that Hamas is no longer operating as a military organized force makes it easy for us to operate and actually allows us to cause less civilian death. So we've been seeing that during the last week or two. Israel has been publishing announcements for the civilian population to leave to safe areas. In that way, we've managed to minimize the number of casualties. And at the end of the day, look, this is a very, very difficult challenge that we have, okay? And we've been dealing with this challenge in the last 18 months. The results so far tell us that actually persistence is worth investing in. And I don't think that the day in which we will see the end of Hamas power in the Gaza Strip is very far.
Right. Also, there's a proposal that has come from Egypt's side that 5 hostages be released every week. Now, there are reports that the US, that Hamas has agreed to this. Where does Israel stand on such a proposal?
Look, we appreciate the intentions of the Egyptian government. I think Egypt is a good partner of Israel. We have a peace agreement that is holding for half a century now, and we appreciate their position. But you have to understand, Egypt is part of the Arab world, of the Arab League. Usually, resolutions that are adopted by the Arab League, speak to the lowest common denominator between Arab countries. This is usually something that is very difficult for Israel to accept. So at the end of the day, we'll have to bridge that gap. There are efforts, as the fight continues, to get into a deal. What we want to achieve, as I said, is a situation in which all the hostages come back and that Gaza has a brighter future with decent people ruling it instead of a terrorist organization that has sequestrated the life of 2 million people just to destroy the state of Israel.
Right. What's the possibility, Ambassador Azar, of another ground invasion? Is that something that's a very likely possibility according to you?
Yes.
How soon?
Well, it's imminent. We have started the ground operation. The IDF has been entering into positions inside the Gaza Strip, beyond the perimeter. And just a few hours ago, our cabinet, convened in order to approve the next moves by the IDF.
All right. So, and is there any kind of, clarity in terms of American support for this ground invasion? We've seen, of course, certain voices coming in from America. Is there a difference in approach in how President Biden and President Trump are approaching this issue?
Yes, there has been a difference. We've been managing, we work with any American administration, and we managed to work with President Biden and many presidents before him. And of course, we are working also with the Trump administration. I think the difference is that with the Biden administration, there were some strings attached to their support. At some points when we saw things differently, they withheld some of the military shipments to Israel. We eventually managed to bridge most of the gaps, but there's no doubt that this created a lot of pressure on us and made us be much more slow when it comes to taking steps in the Gaza Strip. And one example was the Rafah operation. The Biden administration, pressed us not to go for Rafah. They warned that there are going to be tens of thousands of casualties. Eventually, there were almost no civilian casualties. And we took Rafah and we took the border between Gaza and Egypt, which was essential in order to serve our interest. And eventually, thanks to that operation, we managed to eliminate Yahya Sinwar. So sometimes when it comes to friends, you have to know how to deal with your differences, but there is no replacement for the authority of the democratically elected government of Israel to take the right steps to defend the state of Israel. Now, when it comes to the Trump administration, I think that we see more eye to eye. We are seeing a concerted effort to put military pressure by Israel in Gaza and by the United States on the Houthis in Yemen. I think that there is also the issue of Iran, and although the Trump administration would like to refrain from taking military action and offered the Ayatollah's regime a path out of the nuclear weapon program, we yet have to see what's going to happen.
Right. We've seen President Trump talking about turning Gaza into Riviera. He's compared to the French Riviera. We've even seen videos come out on his Truth Social. Do you think he's being serious when he makes that, or is that just a positioning on his part?
Look, I think that, you have to read into the new administration's approach with a new prism. I think that the new American administration has a different direction, a different idea. They believe that the United States should, adjust itself to the new international arena, stop thinking in the ways that it thought in the past. And this is also true for the Middle East. At the end of the day, you cannot be in a situation in which, after rejecting multiple peace offers by the State of Israel and the international community, after doing the most terrible set of crimes that humanity could ever imagine against the State of Israel, that we can just go back to normal. No, it cannot happen. Something has to change. I think it is our duty to think with new ideas, to introduce new ideas. It is important that also our neighbors, especially those that are interested in engaging with us and having peace with us, put pressure on the Palestinians, especially on Hamas and the other terrorist organizations, and delegitimize them. And if that happens, then there is a chance that there will be a brighter future for Gaza, because at the end of the day, look, it is true that Gaza sits at the shore of the Mediterranean. It's a beautiful place. We left it back in 2005. They could have developed it to be, to look exactly like the United Arab Emirates. But instead, they are opting for just concentrating in destroying the state of Israel. And that is detrimental for them. So we have to think in new ways. I think it is possible to create a good life for the people of the Gulf Stream. And we are interested in that.
Right. And also the very fact that U.S. is supporting you this time as far as the, Houthi side is concerned. U.S. has already, launched its own set of attacks to contain. Do you think to that extent the U.S.'s support this time is that much more firm, and also that will prevent this from further escalating? How do you see this?
Well, I think that there is a higher chance of getting stability if the bad guys, the terrorist organizations, understand that they are going to be hit hard. At the end of the day, this is not just about Israel. The Houthis have been intervening, disrupting international trade, causing billions and billions of dollars in damages to countries like Egypt, Europe, the United States, and also India. So I think that this new approach of putting more military pressure is going to bear fruit, gives a chance to the entire region to be more stable and engage in things that we want to engage, like connectivity, trade, and prosperity.
Right. We're also speaking at a time, Ambassador, when we are seeing massive protests taking place in Israel against Prime Minister Netanyahu. What is this owing to? Is it the impatience about the inability to get the hostages back? Is this merely political? Are there administrative reasons because we believe that he has been at loggerheads with his officials? How do you see this?
Well, our politics are at least as vibrant as yours, and that means that people are protesting. People might protest because they think that the military tactic of Israel is wrong. They might protest because they are concerned of their own families, and that's legitimate. There are demonstrations that have to do with, our internal political rules of the game. When it comes to the issue of the committee to elect judges. The debate in Israel is always very vibrant, and that's legitimate. But at the end of the day, what we've seen in the last week is that the government has approved the budget for the next year. The coalition is pretty stable. I think that demonstrations are going to continue, but this is what you usually see in Israel.
Right. And, interesting that you mentioned politics and compared to the countries, because I was just about to ask you, there are several opposition parties in India who are very critical of Israel, who are very critical particularly of the bombings, etc. in Gaza and the violence over there. When you see reactions coming in from mainstream political parties and, of course, regional parties as well, how do you respond to those?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to see that a lot of the delegitimization efforts done by channels like Al Jazeera, TRT, and many other channels around the world are being pretty effective when it comes to convincing some parts of the Indian constituency. But I think that when you really look at the picture, and I see it as an ambassador here in this great country, the nature of the relations between Israel and India is really unique. And we have done so many things together. What we have between us, first and foremost, is trust. We are cooperating in the defense realm, really in a very intimate level, not only between governments, it also has to do with the defense industry. Thanks to the policy, Prime Minister Modi policy of Make in India, Israel has entered many joint ventures in multi-billion-dollar joint ventures with partners here. We're producing together drones. We're entering into the world of autonomous amphibious vehicles, autonomous helicopters, radars, and everything is being produced here in India. So this is an asset for both countries. I think what we have done in agriculture is remarkable. We already have 33 centers of excellence around India, and we are going to go up to 50. Each center like that, the government invested about $4 million, and with our consultancy, we are training thousands of farmers. This has a direct impact on crops and food security in this country. I think this is very substantial. So people, even those people that are critical of Israel, and it's not terrible if you sometimes have criticism, but I think that they can appreciate the deepness and the substance and the value of this amazing relationship. And this, I could go on. We are working together increasingly today in research and development. We have startups working together. Our universities are very interested to enter into cooperation with Indian universities. And recently, we have attracted attention of India infrastructure companies to come and work in Israel. India, I always say that India is the biggest construction site in the world today, right? So you have capacity, you have capabilities. We can enjoy those capabilities. So this relationship really has there is a tendency sometimes to overuse or misuse the term strategic. Everything today is strategic. Like, what is the strategy of that you have on choosing when to do your next field trip or whatever? But no, it's really strategic. Right. It's really strategic because it's a relationship that is based on joint values, on people-to-people contact, and on strategic assets that are, I think, at least from our point of view, irreplaceable. And this is only going to grow. Right. India, it's not just bilateral. I think that the role of India in our region is going to increase because India has a lot to offer. We've seen the sets of agreements that India has signed last year with the UAE on the eastern side of IMEC. We are looking forward to a timing in which our part of the world will be more stable, and then we'll be able to finish the western part of IMEC and to connect India to Europe through, let's say, a complementary channel of trade. Looking at it from a private sector perspective, and I talk with a lot of companies in the private sector, there is already pressure on the line. So today you're already having trucks that are coming from India, going through the Arab Gulf, coming to Jordan, and entering Israel. So the potential is there. We have to work together. I think India can play an amazing role in bringing more prosperity to our region, not just to Israel, but the entire region. And we are standing ready to engage.
You've answered at least the next 3 or 4 of my questions that I was about to ask you. But when you talk about the bilateral relationship between India and Israel, the fact that the two countries have come closer the past few years, how much of this has been a function of the close relationship that Modi and Netanyahu have enjoyed?
Well, look, I think that leadership always plays a role. And in this case, when you have such strong leaders with conviction, with a record of achievement, like Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu, when they come together, there are many things that can be done. And we've seen that. We've seen on how we've been deepening this relationship on defense. We saw it on what we are doing on water. Look, unlike agriculture, in which Israel is maybe 10 or 12th in the world, on water technologies, we are number 1. And the water challenges of this country today are unsurmountable, and they are going to become even more significant because you are utilizing your water resources to develop the country, and there are repercussions for that. So I believe that in the coming 2 decades, by the way, Israel is already desalinating 1 billion cubic meters of water in India today. This is done by a company called IDE that is treating the water of the Reliance refineries, doing some water treatment for nuclear reactors, and also doing the desalination in Chennai, probably maybe in the future also in Maharashtra. But beyond desalination, which is at the high end of treatment, I think the challenge in the near future is going to be purification. Right. Because there is no choice if you want to clean your rivers and if you want to have more agriculture and the population is increasing, you need to recycle the water. So in Israel, we are recycling 95% of our water, and we are irrigating 70% of our crops with purified water. So
Very interesting.
All of this is done by technology companies These companies are already operating in India. We are grappling, with your system here because it's done, the water treatment is done at the state level. And we are engaging with each and every state, especially those that have more water challenges. And we are going to establish 2 centers of excellence on water. And we are trying to see how, as part of the tendering process of the governmental companies, we can actually contribute to this great challenge that I think is going to only grow, especially given the fact that India is becoming richer. Right. And India will have many more resources in the next 2 or 3 decades to deal with these challenges that actually touch each and every individual in this country and also all over the world.
Ambassador Reuven Azar, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us your perspective, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador and Madhav, for an engaging session. Well, lasting peace, that definitely is the need of the hour, given the volatile situation that we live in and the changing world order.